Art Buchwald's commencement address at Catholic University's Columbus School of Law. My fellow Americans, or as we're going to be saying for the next 4 years, how y'all? It is a great honor for me to address the graduating class of Catholic Law School of 130 men and 85 persons. You couldn't have selected a better person to be your commencement speaker today. I am no stranger to the bar. I first became interested in the law when I was working in Paris for the Herald Tribune, and I covered a trial which had to do with a couple caught in a very compromising situation in a Volkswagen. Now, everyone in France was interested in the case because it had to do with such a small car. The defense lawyer argued it was impossible to do what the couple had been accused of doing in a Volkswagen. The judge said he didn't know if this was true or not, so he appointed a commission to study it. It took them 6 months to render their verdict, and they said it was possible, but very difficult. What does a speaker say to a fresh-faced, well-scrubbed graduating class of neophyte lawyers? Your studies are over, and now you will leave these hallowed halls, this ivy-covered campus, to go out and practice the second oldest profession in the world. It is an honorable calling that you have chosen. Some of you will soon be defending poor, helpless insurance companies who are constantly being sued by greedy widows and orphans, trying to collect on their policies. Others will work tirelessly to protect frightened, beleaguered oil companies who are being attacked by wicked and depraved antitrust officials. A few of you will devote your lives to suing doctors, while many of you will choose to sue the patients. As lawyers, you will see to it that whether you represent General Motors, Coca-Cola, or the telephone company, the little fellow will get his day in court. There are some of you who have chosen to go into criminal law, which I must admit is getting harder and harder to distinguish from civil law. To you I say, this too is an honorable undertaking. Only if you keep one thing in mind, and that is to always get your fee in advance. No matter how hard you defended him, a convicted criminal is the most reluctant of all clients to pay the lawyer after the jury has returned a verdict of guilty. This great government of ours has made the law profession the growth industry of America. Every time a new regulation is issued, a new law is passed, and an old law is repealed, 50,000 lawyers are needed to explain it. Just one amendment to the IRS code will give every lawyer in this country enough work to last him 13 years. One memorandum from the Food and Drug Administration will provide enough litigation to feed your families for the rest of your lives. Our country looks kindly on lawyers. Our government hires them to make the rules. Then the private sector is forced to hire lawyers to find ways of breaking them. The beauty of the law is that the more complicated lawmakers make it, the more work it generates for other lawyers. Had the 10 Commandments been written by a government lawyer, Moses could never have carried them on a stone tablet. He would have had to haul them down from the Mount Sinai on the rock of Gibraltar. And if you ever get discouraged, remember this. Even if the meek do inherit the earth, some lawyer will have to probate the will. I'm not trying to give you the impression that your life will be all milk and Gulf oil. The fact of the matter is that the legal profession faces many problems these days. According to a recent survey, lawyers rated lower than garbage collectors on the public's esteem. Now, I think this is an unfair image. I know many lawyers who would make good garbage collectors, but I don't know one garbage collector who would make a good lawyer. Another problem that you face is that you will soon be forced to advertise. This is anathema to most lawyers, but it's coming and there is no sense fighting it. I think if you have to advertise, you should put most of your money into television. I've been working on some TV commercials which might be appropriate. One, which I already have in script form, would show a nattily dressed man standing in front of the Atlanta Federal Prison. He would say, "Hi, I used to be vice president of Lockheed Aircraft." I'd be inside these gates now if it hadn't been for Covington and Burling. If you have committed a white-collar crime, or are thinking of committing one, call this toll-free number, 800-367-2345. We have a special sale this week on income tax fraud and SEC violations. Don't delay. Had the men inside this prison called Covington and Burling, they would be standing out here with me today. The tendency today in this country is to wring our hands and say everything is rotten, but I don't feel that way. I'm basically an optimist. Otherwise, I would never fly Allegheny Airlines. I don't know if this is the best of times or the worst of times, but I can assure you of this. This is the only time you've got. and you can either sit on your expletive deleted or go out and pick a daisy. Now we seem to be going through a period of nostalgia, and everyone seems to think yesterday was better than today. I personally don't think it was, and I would advise you not to wait 10 years from now before admitting today was great. If you're hung up on nostalgia, pretend today is yesterday, and just go out and have one hell of a time. You know, if you were looking for a name for this country right now, you'd have to call it the Uptight Society. Everyone seems uptight about something. The white students want out of our system, the black students want in, the people are mad at the cops, and the priests aren't talking to the cardinals. Doing the column the way I do, I discovered that for every uptight person in this country, there's an uptight organization to back them up. And I discovered that the most uptight organization in this country right now is the National Rifle Association. Now, before you get to like me, I am for gun registration, and it's very personal with me. My neighbor has a gun, and he can't even water his lawn straight. But every time I do an article for gun registration, I get hundreds of letters, all neatly typewritten, telling me I'm trying to destroy the Constitution. And I discovered that everybody in this country who owns a gun also owns a typewriter. So my solution to the gun registration problem is to make everyone register his typewriter. People are very uptight about pornography and what it's doing to all of our lives. Now, I'll be very honest with you. I have always wanted to write a pornographic book, but I get so excited doing the research that I can never get around to the book. My final message to you today is that no matter what you read in the newspapers or see on television, I assure you that we are all going to make it. For 200 years, this country has muddled through one crisis after another, and we have done it without changing our form of government. And it seems like centuries, but it was only 3 years ago that a president of the United States was forced to resign from office under the darkness of clouds, and he was asked to leave the office because he lied to the American people. I was at the White House that night to hear his resignation speech. What impressed me more than anything else was that while one leader of the country was resigning and another was taking his place, I did not see one tank or one helmeted soldier on the street. And the only uniforms I saw that night were on 2 motorcycle policemen who were directing traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue. 200 million people were able to change presidents overnight without one bayonet being unsheathed. And I believe that any country in the world that can still do that can't be all bad. Now, I could have said something very profound today, but you would have forgotten it in 10 minutes. So I choose to give this kind of speech instead, so that in 20 years from now, when your children ask what you did on graduation day, you can proudly say, I laughed. Thank you, and God bless you.